Thanks for joining us. I'm Alexandria Savage, and you're watching News 12 Now. Right now, we are focusing on mental health this month because it is Mental Health Awareness Month, of course, in May. So we are shifting our focus now to a conversation involving those who choose to serve and protect. It's not always the thought process we have, but it's still an important conversation to have. I have joining me Mr. Mike King from the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office. Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good. How you doing today?
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us for this important conversation.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
so Mike, tell me a little bit about how long you've been with the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office.
I've been with the sheriff's office now going on 16 years.
Wow. So that is quite a heavy load. I'm sure you have seen some things in your time in law enforcement. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So,
Unfortunately, so.
so can you tell me a little bit more about some of the ways you choose to handle things? So when something traumatic happens, what are some of the thought processes you have and how you kind of pull yourself out of it?
Most of it comes from you have to have an understanding that a traumatic experience is going to happen. And when it happens, you have to realize that your body is going to have a reaction to a traumatic experience. And the reaction is normal. Most people, when they go through traumatic experiences, kind of go into that shock because they don't realize or they're not prepared for the reaction that their mind or body is going to have. And when you kind of have that understanding of what may happen, it can kind of help you understand and go through the phases of that traumatic process as your body kind of returns back to normal.
And also, Sergeant King, I think in law enforcement, especially, you have to kind of have a strong will mentally because you have to fight your fight or flight reaction that comes natural to us.
Yes, ma'am. Kind of in a sense, we first responders get into these fields, and sometimes we're not really prepared for what we may have to see, but we learn to try to process it and deal with it. The downside of it is a lot of times many don't learn the proper ways of dealing with it or processing the trauma that they deal with, and sometimes they build up walls, and that's kind of what part of the program with the sheriff's office and also statewide that the sheriff is a big backer of the critical incident stress management team, which is a statewide team to kind of be a peer support to first responders and law enforcement officers.
So how does that peer support team work?
The peer support team is actually hosted by Southern Law Enforcement, which is a nonprofit organization. Sheriff Prater is actually a board member of that organization, and like I said, a very strong supporter of the organization. And what it consists of is peer support. You have law enforcement, first responders such as firemen, EMS personnel who are trained to be support members. We also branch out and we have mental health and also chaplains who work with our support team. And basically, when officers or first responders go through a traumatic experience, if they reach out to us or we reach out to them, and we basically just become a support system just to make sure that they're good. And if they need something further than just peer support, like I said, we have mental health personnel in place or chaplains if they need to speak with the chaplain, and just try to prepare them to deal with the traumatic experience and help them as best as possible return to that normal state of mind and the normal state of body as soon as possible.
Absolutely. So the law enforcement community, I feel like, is kind of like a small community of its own. With the officer involved shootings and some of the tension nationwide right now, how are you all able to continue to keep a cool head or process things that are happening in the field when you're going into dangerous situations?
I think the number one thing that I view it as is we human just like everybody else. I don't know of one single law enforcement officer that I personally know of who wakes up in the morning and wants to get involved in a shooting. We all want to go home. We all have families, just like every other citizen that we deal with. Unfortunately, these incidents happen, violence happen, and that's what we're trained to respond to. So you have a job that you have to uphold. We're there to protect the public, and unfortunately, at times, certain things happen, we don't ask to happen, but we're involved in it, and that's what we're trained to do. So you have to take care of your job to protect citizens. You want to take care of yourself and to take care of your family. And at the end of the day, like I said, we have to go home and try to decompress and process everything that happens on a day-to-day basis.
And does that peer support group kind of help with that as well?
Yes, we often stress to everybody we deal with the word trauma. A lot of people attach it to an officer involved shooting, but it can be as simple as just responding to a car crash. And maybe you had a crash in the past, and it reminds you of that crash. That could be a traumatic experience to you. So trauma is defined as a traumatic experience, but that traumatic experience could be defined differently among different people. Something that is traumatic to me may not be traumatic to you. We're merely set up to be a support system to whatever a first responder is going through. If they're experiencing something traumatic, no matter whether somebody views it as small or large, then our job is just to be a support system for them and make sure that they have everything they need to, like I said, try to get back to that normal stage of mind and body.
Absolutely. Now, when things happen like what happened yesterday in Bossier, and there is a situation that involves an officer being shot, how do you all come together in that moment? Because, the people who are there, the witnesses, it affects the community.
Correct. A lot of times, normally when we respond to an officer-involved shooting, no matter what agency it may be, like I said, this is a statewide program that we're involved in. Normally, that agency may reach out to the team or somebody on the team, and normally, like I said, we just respond on scene, and we're just responding as a support for whatever officers or first responders are involved. And like I said, it doesn't have to necessarily be a shooting. It could be a major crash where somebody might have lost their life, or like I said, something as simple as a house fire. We just respond on scene and simply just provide support to those who are involved. And it may be as simple as just bringing bottled water, something, food to eat while they're on scene, to try to make sure that they're taken care of, like I said, mentally and physically. And if they need something beyond that, we have means set up to try to refer them to, like I said, a mental health counselor or mental health personnel.
Okay, so what tips do you have for those dealing with trauma, or, feeling the tension right now from all of these violent incidents in our area?
The main thing I would always say is try not to keep anything bottled up. I think what we've learned over the years, especially dealing with military personnel with like PTSD, it's a lot of times it's because they never had an out. They never had the opportunity to speak on it, to get things off their chest. And a lot of time I refer to trauma kind of like a wound. If you don't clean and take care of that wound, it can be infected. And once it's infected, it can, move to other parts of the body and affect other things. So if you're dealing with trauma, if you feel like you need to talk to somebody, then make that step and go ahead and find someone to talk to, whether it's a mental health person, a pastor, but make the step to try to reach out to somebody to get help, to help you get something off your chest and not keep it in.
Well, Sergeant King, are there any last words you'd like to leave our audience with?
No, other than the sheriff's office is hosting a critical incident training class May 22nd and 23rd here in Shreveport at the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office Reentry Building, which is available to all law enforcement and first responder personnel.
Okay, and you'll probably need to come back on and tell us about that too when we get closer to it.
That'll work.
All right, well, thank you so much, Sergeant King. You have a great day.
Yes, ma'am. You have a great one.